Using stories in your email marketing can actually boost your open rates by 22%, and your click-through rates can jump up by up to 37%, according to the Boffin. So if you'd like a bit of that action for yourself, I'm going to show you how to craft stories in your emails, even if you're not a natural storyteller. Awesome! Welcome to the show. So, before we get into actually how to tell these stories, I want to tell you some really surprising reasons that stories work so well. Not just in terms of getting sales, but actually make your marketing way easier to do. And then we're going to get into actual tips in case you're not a very good storyteller or you just want to improve your storytelling skills. I think we can all do that, especially when you understand the kind of impact they're going to have. So the first really good reason that stories work so well is when you tell a story, whatever it's about, your audience actually builds the most important factor, which is they get to know you and they get to start to trust you. So if I'm telling a story about my 2 Bengal cats, Nova and Ivy, you're naturally finding out more about me as a person who lives in a home, who has 2 Bengal cats, and I have to deal with the fact that Nova puked on the stairs yesterday morning and I had to pick that up. It really humanizes you. And when we humanize people, well, we become not invincible. We become real, okay? So that's one of the things you can do. But also, it doesn't just have to be stories that are about you. There could be stories about things you've observed. And when we do that kind of story, the audience gets to learn about the kind of things you observe and your opinions about them. Now, I'm not going to say you should get all political and tell people what you really think of that situation or that situation that's happening there in the world. If that's not your style, for most of us, we want to kind of keep away from that stuff. But if you did, that's an extreme example of allowing people to identify with you. Oh, I agree with you. I disagree with you. But I'm really pleased that you've become a much more dimensionalized person. And that's really, really powerful. The second reason that stories work really well and they really help you with your marketing is, look, I don't know about you, but I feel like there are only so many ways I can talk about our programs. I can only talk about our Email Hero Blueprint program from so many different ways. I can tell you this feature, this benefit, but there are a limited number of different ways I can talk about the damn thing, right? And then I'm gonna run out and be like, well, what else am I gonna do? And if I do that, I'm gonna not write the email, I'm gonna stop writing emails, I'm gonna just not send that email. So that's gonna be a bad situation. However, you can't run out of stories. There's always stuff happening. There's stuff happening in the world. There's stuff happening to you. There's stuff happening in your industry. There's stuff happening to your parents, to your family members, to your sister, your brother, your partner. So if you use stories as a way of relating to your audience and giving yourself something to say, yes, sometimes you will relate that to the same benefit or to the same message as it relates to your product or your service. But really think about it. You can't run out of stories. There are so many things that have happened to you and so many things that are happening to you, even small things that happen to you on a day-to-day basis. And that's one of the things I want to talk about is, and this is a huge mistake people make, by the way, the stories you tell don't have to be grand, crazy things. So yes, I have amazing stories about some incredible things that happened to me. The day that I met the Queen of England, that was amazing. I also shared a flight with the Prince and the Princess. I shared a flight with, what are they even called? See, I'm really into royalty, as you can tell. Anyway, with Kate and whatever he's called. Let me know in the comments. I can't remember what the heck he's called. Kate and the other guy, right? I ended up sharing a flight with them, which was really, really crazy, right? So I've done these amazing things. I've toured the world. People think that we have to, in order to tell stories, tell these big inspirational stories of crazy things and amazing things we've done. Truth is, when you tell that kind of story, it's an inspirational story. And that puts you on a pedestal. That makes people go, wow. But it serves a very different purpose to a relatable story. And a relatable story is the cat puking on the stairs, the time your kid wouldn't go to sleep, the small moments that everyone can relate to. And it's those small stories that when you tell them, as you'll see in this next section, that's when people really relate. Because when we tell stories, it physically takes up more space in people's minds. We remember stories of stuff that we did 10, 20 years ago, but we can't remember a shopping list or a list of really important steps to do something. Why? Because the stories stick, whereas lists of facts actually just go out of fashion. They leave your your head. And the reason that happens is because of the third reason that stories work is because they allow people to imagine. Think about it. The way that our brains work, you go and see a film, you go and see a movie, you're watching a TV show on the couch, right? And you've got Netflix on or whatever. The reason you emote, the reason you feel anything, you feel sadness when the little mouse dies in the Green Mile. The reason that you feel so excited when the person wins the game show and they win $1 million. The reason you feel happy, the reason you laugh at that funny bit, why? It's because you put yourself, can't help it as a human being, you put yourself into that story. I call it first positioning. You put yourself in the first position as if you're experiencing that. It's why horror movies make you so afeared, terrified, scared. The reason that all happens is because you can't help but when we tell a story, put ourselves in the action. So when, instead of telling people the facts about when they could use your product or service, or tell them what it does, if you tell them a story using the techniques I'm about to share with you, the person will put themselves into the story and they'll start imagining the problem. And when you tell the problem as a story, the problem becomes real. The emotions come to the surface and we start feeling something. When we feel something, we want to do something with that feeling. We either want to get more of that feeling, we want to chase that feeling, or we want to run away from the feeling. We are the mouse, either running away from the cat or running towards the cheese. We are all, as human beings, that mouse. So we're either going to be pushing people towards a solution or away from a problem, and we're going to be doing that through the kind of stories we tell. So it might be that we're telling them about the problem and we're having people imagine the problem. You know, when you're doing this and when you're doing that, metal story technique that we'll get into. Now people have those emotions at the surface and they are now the mouse running away from the cat. How cool is that? What happens? We feel it. We experience it. We make decisions when we feel things. Nobody makes any decision, whether it's a yes or no decision, until they feel something. That's why you hear people saying, I've got a good feeling about this. I feel like I should do that. I really want that thing. Not I need that thing. I want that thing. And when we want something, that's a feeling, and that's when we make decisions. The other thing you could paint, of course, is a story of the after picture. That's you as the little mouse running towards the cheese. The after picture. Wouldn't you like your life to be like this? Your situation to be like that? Your lawn to be like this? Your relationship to be like that? Imagine having the freedom just to book a holiday, a little trip next weekend and drop everything, and having that freedom to just step on that plane and a few hours later be stepping off in the warm heats of... I'm telling a story. I'm telling a story that gets you to imagine an outcome. The other thing you could be telling people the story of is what it's like using your product or service. Tell them about that experience of how simpler it is. Imagine yourself able to just click a few buttons and send this out and it gets X result. Tell it into a story. These are those surprising reasons that stories work. Before we get into how to actually tell really good stories, I'm going to give you some great tips to do that, even if you're not a very good storyteller. I would love it if you would come and join our free Facebook community. It's called the Email Marketing Show Community, and it's where we talk about all of this email marketing stuff day and night. There's a few thousand of us in there every single day sharing tips, sharing our ideas, sticking up emails and saying, hey, can I get some feedback? Asking questions, getting answered. All you need to do is go to Facebook, search for the Email Marketing Show Community, and we'll get you in there. You also get the choice of joining our email list to actually see the kind of email marketing that we do. So how do we actually tell great stories? How do we immediately improve the stories so that they make people want to buy? Well, we've already talked about the fact that we want to tell stories that get some kind of emotion, but they don't need to be extreme emotions. We don't need to be turning into Stephen King and making people horrified to read our emails. We definitely don't need to go that far. We also don't need to be laugh out loud funny. We don't need to be any of these things. What we do need to be is genuinely us. And one of the big mistakes people make is they try and be quirky because they like other emails that they receive from people that happen to be quirky. Or they like to be funny because they try to be funny. Or they try to be motivational because they like somebody's emails that are motivational. What you actually need to be is you. You need to be legit. You need to be genuinely you. So if you happen to be a very sincere, straight-laced, formal person, that's what you should be like in your storytelling. That's what you should be like in your emails, because you're showing people what it's really like to get to know you. I don't want to read someone's really formal emails and then meet them in real life and they're like, yeah, cool, whatever. That's not really going to work. That's why in my emails, I swear, that's why in my emails, I'm very casual in conversation, because if you come on one of my coaching calls or you come and watch and listen to the podcast, you're going to get a real sense of what I'm like. So I write how I speak. One of the easiest ways to turn anything into a story, even if you're like, I don't really have a story for this, like, how do I storymatize this? That's not even a word. How do I storymatize this? You might ask. And the easiest way to do this, I'm going to give you 4 different methods, by the way. The first one is location. Give something a location. And that could be an explicit location or it could be an implicit location. As soon as you give something a location, it now conjures up in someone's mind a visual. And that means it's now a story. It's a really cool trick that I use all the time. And if you use this, you're going to take up more space on people's minds, and that's going to lead to them feeling stuff, and they're going to make more sales. Oh, that's really, really good, right? So how do you make a location in someone's head? Well, first of all, you could just say it. You could say, I'm standing at the kitchen bench while my cup of tea is brewing. That's what I do every single day when I'm writing my daily email. Right? So I could say that. I'm just standing at the island in the kitchen and the kettle's boiling in the background and I'm writing and I've just had a thought. Just tell them where you are. That's the explicit story. The implicit story, because you don't want to be like every email like, today I'm in the kitchen. It feels like Lee Captain's log. Today on the bridge. Da, 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 da. It doesn't have to be an explicit location. It could be an implicit location. I'm pushing my daughter on the swing and there's another kid running around the roundabout. Oh, okay, I'm in a play park. Or I'm boiling the kettle to make my first cup of tea of the day. Where am I? I'm probably going to be in a kitchen. Inside my fridge, there's a really old plum that's really growing its own culture on its fur on its skin, right? Where am I? I'm in the kitchen. So these are implicit locations. Like, could the kettle be maybe on a little caddy towards my desk, like towards one side of my room, in my office on a desk? Yes, it could be, but it's not. And we're going to allow people to make that leap. And if for them it is in my office, if for them it is in a little special side room in the tea making room, then fine. I'm not going to interrupt that in their heads. So the first thing I want you to do is a location. The second thing is to use open loops. What's really interesting when we tell stories is we don't have to tell the whole story in that one email. We can tell the story to a point where we're able to make a point that excites interests or creates an emotional response in that email for our audience, and then say, I'll tell you the next part tomorrow. And because people love hearing the end of a story, in fact, we hate it when we don't know the end of a story, that's when we're going to get a higher open rate of tomorrow's email. And you can't always do that. But if you realize your story is kind of getting a bit too long, then that's a good way of shortening the email, saying, hey, I'll tell you more tomorrow. And it serves you positively. Get your audience, leave them at that crescendo, at that cliffhanger, and then tell them you're going to finish it off tomorrow. One of the things you're going to do through these stories is you are going to, and this is number 3, is you're going to use metaphor to create understanding. So in your emails, you're going to tell a story, and then from that story of a small relatable moment in your life or in the world that you're observing, you're then going to relate that and use it as a metaphor to teach an important, valuable lesson that your audience needs to hear. So in my world, where I'm teaching the effectiveness and how to do effective email marketing that actually makes sales, right? I'm going to tell a story and then I'm going to relate it to a lesson that helps our audience to have a small moment. Not a big eureka moment necessarily. Sometimes on the odd occasion that's going to happen. But what it really is that moment of, I hadn't thought of it like that. So we're actually going to use the stories as a metaphor. But here's how you really start a story from an email or in an email that gets people reading. And this is tip number 4. And I call this start in the action. And I've got some really cool tips for you to do this. Look, what's more compelling? The car that's stopped standing still and you're looking at it, or a car that's moving? Well, as human beings, we can't help but have our attention drawn to things that's moving. It's built into us from back in the day when we were all running around living in caves and stuff, because a thing that's moving could be a predator. We might have to run and escape from that predator. So it's built into us. When something is moving, we pull our attention towards it. And so in your emails, you want to create action. Think about an action movie like a James Bond movie or a Fast and Furious 217 or whatever the hell number we're up to right now. Think about what happens in those movies. The opening scene is not Mr. Bond sat on the sofa at home with his phone on the arm of the chair. He's watching a little bit of Cash in the Attic, and his phone dings, and it's M or Q or L or whoever the assistant is, whoever the genius inventor is, and it's not them texting going, "Oh, I think we've got a problem in X country. You might want to go and check it out, James." That's not what's happening. Instead, and then, of course, he would stand up, put his cup of tea down, take his specs off, put the TV on standby, make sure the cat's okay, put his shirt on, get in the car, and then go and find the baddies. That's not what happens. The opening scene of a James Bond movie is not somebody sitting static. Instead, it's whack, he's getting hit across the face. It's zing, the car flying by. It's ping, the bullets flying. Why? Because something in motion grabs attention. So how do we apply that to emails? Because obviously there's not like a big multi-million-dollar movie inside of your emails, but what is that? So the way you apply this is by starting it in the action, rather than yesterday, I was standing in the kitchen and I realized that my cat, Nova, had vommed on the stairs. I'm going to be like, there's puke dripping down the 3rd step. We're already in the action. So what's the trick to actually do that? This is a trick I learned from a journalist friend of mine, and that is you write the email, hey, I'm standing in the kitchen, and I realized that my cat Nova had puked on the stairs. There was vom dripping from the 2nd step. I just delete the 1st paragraph. So that 2nd paragraph, which starts, there's vom dripping from the 3rd step, that's where the email starts. We're starting right in that action. And that means when people open your email, they're already in motion, which means it's much more appealing to actually come in and read the rest of the email. So using these techniques, you're able to write much more compelling emails. Your emails are going to have much more emotion where people actually feel something rather than just reading a bunch of facts. So when people feel, they imagine it, they emote, and then they're going to want to make decisions, to go check out the landing page, register for the thing, reply, book an appointment, and I want you to go and apply all of this stuff today. Hope you find it useful. I'll see you in next week's episode.